Most people don't realize there are many ancient writings connected to biblical history that were never included in the Bible. Some of these texts describe events not found in Scripture. Others attempt to expand on the life of Jesus, his teachings, or the early church. Today, we're going to explore several of these writings, what they contain, and the specific historical reasons they were not included in the biblical canon. Some of the most well-known are what are called the Infancy Gospels. These include texts such as the Infancy Gospel of Thomas and the Protoevangelium of James. These writings focus on the early life of Jesus, a period that the New Testament only briefly mentions. In these accounts, Jesus is often portrayed performing miracles as a child. Some describe him shaping birds from clay and bringing them to life. Others include moments where his actions seem sudden or difficult to reconcile with the tone of the canonical Gospels. Because of this, early Christian leaders questioned whether these portrayals were consistent with the character and message of Jesus found in widely accepted Scripture. Another important text is the Gospel of Thomas. Despite its name, it is not a narrative gospel. Instead, it is a collection of sayings attributed to Jesus. Some of these sayings closely resemble those found in the New Testament. Others are more symbolic, abstract, or open to interpretation. In many cases, the text emphasizes personal insight or inner understanding as the path to truth. Because of this, it has often been associated with early movements that focused on hidden or specialized knowledge. These perspectives were not widely accepted by early Christian communities, which emphasized teachings that were shared openly and consistently. There is also the Gospel of Mary, often associated with Mary Magdalene. This text presents a dialogue between disciples and includes teachings focused on inner spiritual understanding. It also portrays Mary in a prominent role among the followers of Jesus. However, like many of these writings, it survives only in partial form, and its original context is not fully known. Beyond these, there are many other texts that were read and circulated in the early centuries. Some contain teachings. Others contain visions, symbolic language, or expanded narratives. So why were these books not included in the Bible? The process of forming the biblical canon did not happen all at once. It developed gradually over time as early Christian communities used, compared, and evaluated different writings. Several key criteria guided this process. First, apostolic origin. Texts were expected to be connected directly to the apostles or to individuals closely associated with them. If a document was written long after the time of the apostles, or if its authorship could not be clearly established, it was viewed with caution. Second, consistency with established teachings. Writings were compared to texts that were already widely accepted and used in teaching. If a book introduced ideas that conflicted with these core teachings, or shifted the focus in ways that were not aligned with the broader message, it was less likely to be included. Third, widespread and continuous use. The books that became part of the New Testament were consistently read across many different regions and communities. In contrast, many of these other writings were only used in specific groups and did not gain universal acceptance. Fourth, historical and textual reliability. Some of these writings were composed in the 2nd century or later, well after the events they describe. Others contain expanded details, symbolic visions, or highly developed ideas that reflect later interpretations rather than the earliest traditions. This is often where the idea of being too mythological or too speculative comes into play. Certain texts describe detailed heavenly journeys, complex hierarchies of angels, or extended supernatural events. While meaningful to some, these elements were not consistently accepted as foundational teaching. It's also important to understand that these books were not simply banned in a single moment. There was no one event where all of these texts were gathered and rejected. Instead, as the canon became more clearly defined, certain writings were recognized as authoritative, while others gradually fell out of regular use. Early Christian leaders and councils helped confirm what was already widely accepted. For example, Lists of recognized books appear in the writings of figures such as Athanasius in the 4th century. Regional councils, including those held in Hippo and Carthage, affirmed the collection of texts that had already been in consistent use. So the canon was not created suddenly. It was recognized over time. That does not mean these other texts have no value. They can still offer insight into how different communities understood faith, meaning, and spiritual life in the early centuries. They reflect a wide range of perspectives and interpretations. But they were not included in the final canon because they did not meet the same standards of authorship, consistency, reliability, and widespread acceptance. For those interested in exploring further, here is a list of some commonly referenced non-canonical or apocryphal texts. The Book of Enoch, the Book of Jubilees, the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Mary, the Infancy Gospel of Thomas, the Proto-Evangelium of James, the Gospel of Peter, the Gospel of Philip, the Acts of Paul and Thecla, the Shepherd of Hermas, the Apocalypse of Peter, the Apocalypse of Paul. There is also the Secret Gospel of Mark. But this is a much more debated text. It comes from a claimed discovery in the 20th century rather than from ancient manuscripts consistently preserved over time. Because of this, many scholars question its authenticity, and it is not widely accepted as a reliable historical source. For that reason, it is usually discussed separately from other early writings. Overall, these texts vary widely in content, style, and historical background. Some are more symbolic. Some are more narrative. Some are fragmentary. But together, they show that early religious thought was not limited to a single set of writings. Understanding them helps provide context, not replacement. It helps us see how ideas developed, how communities interpreted teachings, and how the final collection of Scripture was recognized. Some writings became central. Others remained outside. But all of them reflect an ongoing search for meaning, truth, and understanding. And in that search, we're reminded to slow down, to seek wisely, and to hold on to what is true.